Everyone needs to choose a language. Oh, sorry. Everyone needs to choose a language. I think you can see it on the screen. Thank you. If you've chosen French or Spanish, you can mute the original audio or hear it in the background at lower volume. It's up to you. I think someone might have their mic open. Can you please mute yourself? That would be great. All right, so we're almost at the end of what's been a very exciting journey together these past few days. In this session, Taking the Learning Forward, we're going to look back on the 4 days and reflect on some of the ideas the event may have sparked and what we might do differently as a result of what we learned during these past few days. So we'll start this session with first inviting you to share your thoughts, and then we'll invite a panel of some IDEAL and BHA staff to add their perspectives before we move to closing remarks. So I'd like to turn it over now to Maya Pearson, who's IDEAL's Communications and Knowledge Management Advisor. And I also have to say leads this incredibly awesome team that we have of KM Communications, who's sort of been the backbone of this event. But Maya's going to take us through the first part of the session on individual reflection. So over to you, Maya.
Thanks so much, Karen. Yes, so we'll take some time now to reflect individually on conversations we've been part of over the past week. We will play some more instrumental music, and you'll have about 5 minutes to begin reflecting on the 2 questions you will see on the slide. And you can jot down your thoughts in a notebook, on a scrap of paper, or type them into the computer, whatever you prefer. After this reflection, we'll give you an opportunity to share back with us if you'd like. But this is really a time to think back on what you've taken away from the sessions you have participated in this week and what you may want to take forward or explore further within your team or organization. So I will set my timer for 5 minutes, and Kim will turn on some reflective music. All right, thank you so much. I think you got a little bit more than 5 minutes there to think through those two questions. And those were, what were your, and for anyone who joined while that music was going on, just to explain, we were reflecting on our individual learnings throughout the week from the sessions we have participated in, and answering 2 prompts just on our own in a notepad or in a document in the computer. The questions, what are your key takeaways from the sessions you attended? And if this is the only session you have attended, what are you most curious about revisiting later? That was the first question. And the other was, what ideas are you most excited about exploring and or putting into practice in your work? Those were the 2 questions we thought about. And now I'd like to invite you all to share those reflections if you feel comfortable doing so. We're really curious to hear what has resonated with you, what you're still thinking about, and what you'd like to take forward. So to do this sharing, we're going to use Mentimeter, and that is a platform that you can reach through a link in the chat. So if you look in the chat, there is a link that will take you straight to the Mentimeter platform. If you are unable to access Mentimeter, you can also, you can see the responses on the screen here on Zoom, and then you can put your own answers into the Zoom chat. That works as well. But if you can use Mentimeter, that will be the best, because then we can all see the responses flowing through on the screen. And I'd like to invite Karen to join me here in looking at these answers that are popping up on the screen as well. So key takeaways from the sessions you attended. And if this is the only session you attended, what are you curious about revisiting later? COVID-19 is just one of the many complexities in which IPs are operating. Very true. I think that has come through quite clearly in many of the sessions.
And we're seeing an amazing array of adaptations and resilience during unprecedented time. Collective commitment, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad to see networking. That was one of the challenges, to figure out how to do networking when it's all online. It's a challenge for sure compared to the in-person conferences that we're used to. I'm glad to see that someone feels that was accomplished.
I saw a comment that's gone now, but it was about prior investment in digital positioned people well to adapt when they needed to.
Yeah, that is true.
This is one we'll love as ideal. There is so much potential for collaboration and coordination moving forward. How can we make sure we maintain what we've started this week?
Yeah, that's a really important question. We certainly don't want this to be just a one-off thing that then ends without any continuation. We're really keen to keep the discussions going.
And then a good one just came up too that I felt in a session that I just attended, which is, how do we help those who aren't accessing the technology as well to still participate? I think it's a challenge for us operationally as implementers, as well as for our community participants.
Mm-hmm.
Short and simple indicators. We appreciate that one. Very true. This one came up in one of the sessions I was in too, that if you don't have that trust before you have to go digital, it's very hard to build it after you go digital. But where you have that trust and those relationships, you can make these switches more easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good observation. The trust. Yeah, one of the sessions I attended also talked about that, how you can communicate with project participants over the phone in a way that you build trust.
I think I see one, not seeing the whole box, a lot of similarities. I felt that so much this week, you know, as different as our contexts are, as different as our programs are, as different as we all are as people and practitioners, there's so much that's similar and common that we can build on together.
Mm-hmm.
Let local partners lead. I think if we had a chance to vote on that one, we'd see a lot of thumbs up.
For sure.
No, oh wait, no, this is one I love too. This is one of my mottos. There's no such thing as failure as long as you learn from your experience. Big amen to that.
Absolutely. And in fact, in the very last session, just before this, we talked about risk communication and community engagement, and we sort of dug in a little bit and what did not go so well, and what can we take away from that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People are amazingly adaptable. Absolutely, that's one thing we've seen, for sure.
For sure. I wonder if we move to the second question now. We can always go back to this question if more answers come in. But the second question, what ideas are you most excited about exploring and or putting into practice in your work? So that should come up on your screen if you're in the Mentimeter link, and you can put in your answer to that one as well. Active exchange of up-to-date information. Yeah. And capture, transfer institutional knowledge. So yeah, I think as Ideal, we're really interested in supporting that exchange between activities in different countries and different regions, keeping that knowledge exchange going as much as we can support that as possible.
And this is definitely something we can support around building better tools that are adaptable and flexible. How can we be more adaptable? How can our methods and tools be more adaptable?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so much here about learning from each other. That's exciting.
Really exciting.
Yeah. Using existing communication channels. Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Active exchange of up-to-date information. This is something we were trying to do during our COVID-19 learning series, to really offer those spaces in real time. And I think it's something we want to get better at, to find how we can help you share those experiences quickly when you need them most, when you need that learning most.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a report, which none of us have time to read. No.
Exactly. And we also know you're also busy implementing programs, so finding a way that's efficient and working for you.
And experimenting with digital solutions to reach the last mile, you know, and I reflect on how digital has helped us be so much more inclusive. That really resonates with me. How can we really exploit, in the positive sense of the word, what we've seen happen during COVID to use it to its extent, its best possibilities?
Yeah.
Remote monitoring, yeah, a lot of lessons there. I'm sure as we switch to our panel, we'll have some comments on that from our panelists.
And distill and package knowledge, for sure. Something we try to do. We have, if you don't know about it, we have an FSN Network blog that we're doing. We're always looking to see how we can distill and package knowledge in a way that works for different audiences, because we know that different audiences have different needs and ways of absorbing knowledge.
Oh, this is nicely written. Let's see, facilitate to transform transactional partnership into transformational partnership between INGO and LNGO. We saw so many good examples this week. It was so exciting to see, you know, a nice number. We would have liked more, but a nice number of local NGO partners joining in these discussions and sharing their experiences and just showing us just how much they have to offer and how much we need to start rethinking the model.
Yeah.
Anything else jump out at you, Mai? I think we're rotating now among the same ones, and
Yeah,
new ones coming in.
Yeah.
This is great. Oh wait, here we go. Wait, help us deliver a CLA crash course to those in the field. Love that. That's very practical.
Very.
There was a nice session today where I'm going to space on who was presenting it, but it was about how they did remote training in SBC. It was a resource reveal, I think, and it was wonderful how they just do simple approaches to get training out to the field fast, simple, you know, in some simple methodologies, and then to mentor remotely.
Yeah, I saw one, now I don't see it anymore, around how digital is not reaching women and other vulnerable populations.
It's on the right hand.
Oh, there, yes.
Yeah.
An important issue that maybe that was definitely discussed in a couple sessions, didn't come out in many sessions, but a couple really important sessions, an issue definitely important to bring forward.
How to design and conduct a totally virtual workshop. When you figure it out, tell us, because we learned so much this week, and we do look forward to sharing that with you, what we've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts on that too at the end of the workshop. So
we really did. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for generously sharing your thoughts and feedback into that nice platform. Thank you. I think with that, let me just see if there are any specific instructions. No, I think just thank you for your participation, and it's really exciting to see all of the conversations that were started this week. And I can't wait to see how we'll all take this forward. Over to you, Karen, for the panel.
Give me just a second here. Today, technology is not being as smooth as earlier in the week. That might reflect our general level of tiredness, so please bear with us. Today may not be quite as polished as we've tried to be in some of our sessions. Wonderful. All right, so we're going to kick off a panel, and we'd like to invite our panelists in this session to share some of their reflections from the week. So we're going to start with introductions, and I guess there's a way to put the spotlight on our three panelists, right? So we're not seeing everybody's icons. There we go, beautiful. All right, so we'll start with you, Adam.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Karen, so much for having me. My name is Adam Trowbridge, and I work with BHA on the monitoring and evaluation team. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And Antje?
Hi, everyone. This is Antje Becker-Benton. I'm working as Senior Advisor and Team Leader for the Behavior Change and Community Health team at Save the Children, based in Washington, D.C. And with IDEAL, I'm one of the TAP leaders to reactivate the Social and Behavior Change TAP.
Wonderful. And Gitao?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Gitao Mbure. I'm IDEAL's Senior Technical Advisor for Food Security, and I lead coordination of technical leadership across IDEAL's content focus areas, and I'm based in DC. Thank
you so much. So in this panel, we've asked our guests to reflect on the conference from their own perspectives, not speaking on behalf of their organizations or Ideal or anything. This is more just personal, just like the Mentimeter was personal reflections. We've asked these for panelists to share their own personal reflections on the theme of this conference, really, and what have we seen, what have we heard? One of our key themes was navigating new possibilities in a rapidly changing world. And so panelists, we'd love for you to share, what are some of those new possibilities or other ideas that the event sparked for you? What are some of your key takeaways from the sessions that you attended? So Gitao, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Karen. It was a very exciting week for me. I was really impressed with the rich diversity of experiences and of lessons learned. So I think there's a lot to unpack. And as the weeks unfold, I think we'll look back and just see how much came out of the conversations that we had this week. But a few things that really stuck with me. One is just to see the greater responsibility that local partners have taken on. So, with all the restrictions of COVID-19 and some of the complications with programming, you can see there was this intentional empowerment of local actors. So international agencies really give more responsibilities, and local agencies took on more responsibility. And that goes from not just international to national. It also goes from national to subnational. So we also saw empowerment of community-based service providers. Another thing that stuck with me was just to see how the partnership models are evolving. I think this was mentioned earlier, but there is a realization, and we are making progress towards this, that the way partnerships are modeled between international agencies and local partners is changing. So we are seeing movement from this project-based transactional partnership to more of a longer-term transformational partnership. And so that's really encouraging because I think the local partners have the capacity, they just need the opportunity. And then lastly, I think we've seen an acceleration in the digital revolution, if you may. So I think a lot of aspects that were previously analog have now gone digital. So this is also affecting the way folks work with local partners. We are making progress. There are some challenges for sure, but I think there are lots of opportunities on the hardware front, I think on the software side, and even just looking at the culture of operating in a digital world. I think that's so exciting how that is evolving.
Thank you so much for those reflections. Anshe, would you like to share some of your reflections?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I will focus, I think, more on the risk communication and community engagement component that I'm working in, and where I was witnessing some of the programs and discussions today and previously. And my impression, I agree, Gitao, with you that there has been a lot of adjustment and a lot of program work. A lot of programs were able to adjust with local partners. There has been a large learning curve. I've witnessed also some bottom-up approaches in risk communication, community engagement, for example, in Malawi, where people, pulled together a radio show in order to be able to respond to questions that they collected before. And that was good old radio and TV. While in the meantime, I did witness some trial and error, let's say, in the behavior change side on digital components. I think there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of trying out things, but there's also a lot of, lack of reach. As we've seen in the reflections, some of the vulnerable populations, the women who don't own their cell phone, the youth who don't own the cell phone, where there's assumptions that they have access to social media and they may not. So I think in SPC, we still have to have a very keen eye on who can actually participate and who's not, and what economical differences there are between the different strata. before we can assume that that actually works. However, there are signs when messages, for example, include talk to your family members about this, that there is some transfer. All in all, I think there are some feedback loops with communities that have been developed over WhatsApp, for example, but more is needed. So I think one of the takeaways here again is that risk communication and community engagement consists of two components. One is risk communication, which has been done ample, but we're going into a different phase. And now that, you know, it's about vaccine, we realize there's a big component that doesn't react to information only, and that is trust. And so I think things go as usual in phases, and we're in a different phase with COVID now than we were in the beginning, and we have to all adjust. I think that's also part of the learning curve. So now, how do we generate trust? And that happens usually in dialogue with communities. So more needs to be done there. There is a bit of the tip of the iceberg happening, but, you know, we had some discussions and some presentations about it. The other piece where there is learning curve is the coordination with the risk communication and community engagement pillar that is run, you know, regionally and nationally also needs to happen more, so that there's coordination and, you know, programs are not doing their own thing, but coordinate with others so that we develop a choir that kind of goes in the same direction. Going forward, I think coordination needs to continue, community engagement and feedback loops need to be kept up. But there needs to be also a linkage between new media and older media, is my impression. So that we're not leaving radio and TV and other, and especially community radio behind, but we're linking them up. And we heard examples of that. How can we link up community radio with, you know, interactive voice response, for example? How do we make that happen? There are examples. This can continue and has to continue. And I think what also was great comment by somebody who came from the economic and agriculture field is to say, don't stick to health only, make sure that these RCCE messages now enter agriculture and livelihood. And we're, you know, using our strengths in integrated programming to bring together the different components and link them up even maybe with SBC and RCCE to make sure that we integrate also issues of gender-based violence, of lack of education, and those kind of things. So I think, you know, I'm looking forward to the next phase, the second generation of RCCE, with all these fabulous, fabulous lessons learned. Over to Adam.
Thank you, Antje. Yeah, over to you, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks for having me. So yeah, this has been such a full week with interesting and engaging discussions, and it's been so good to reflect on how far we've come as a community over the last 15 months. I remember the early days of the pandemic when IDEAL quickly launched the COVID-19 learning series, which was such a great opportunity for the community to share ideas, talk about successes and failures, and just see that we're not alone in grappling with these challenges and how to adapt in this context. And it's been so good this week and so encouraging to hear about how far we've come since then, and hear about all the progress that has been made and approaches to effectively implement, monitor, and evaluate our programs in this difficult context. As Brian Bacon said on Monday in the opening session, this community has always had an impressive capacity to learn and adapt, and this year has really proven that. And one of these areas where we've seen this capacity to learn and adapt is the switch to remote data collection methods. This switch was fast early on in March of last year, but it's clear from this week that we've learned so much about how to do it better as we've continued adapting. And there was quite a few examples that stuck with me from the sessions I attended this week. So many partners highlighted the limitations of remote data collection approaches, including issues of representation, and especially in making sure that we can include the most vulnerable in our surveys and adaptations that they've made to mitigate these issues. So on Monday, Dan Gilligan from IFPRI, he described how they overcame the fact that only 35% of households had mobile phones in an area where they were conducting a survey in Ethiopia. And so to get around this, they decided to send local guides from the communities to bring cell phones to the households so that they could participate, which ensured their participation and also limited any risks of COVID transmission of sending outsiders into the communities. And Luca from FAO described the surprisingly successful transition the IPC from in-person to remote, and how he didn't think we'd go back to exactly how we were doing it before. And I think that's a key takeaway, is that many of these lessons that we've learned, we can take forward with us and use in our programming going forward. One of those ideas is on Monday, Arif described remote site visit approaches that BHA has held with partners. And I think these collaborative approaches could be useful long beyond COVID-19 context, where we can have productive engagements with our partners without necessarily having to get on a plane to do it. I really enjoyed Nestor from ADRA, his presentation on how they transitioned to mobile phone-based post-distribution monitoring and how they adapted hybrid approaches for things like water quality monitoring, where fully remote wasn't possible. And another presentation that really stuck with me was Rosella from WFP presenting on destigmatizing remote data collection. She challenged us to think about how we shouldn't immediately be skeptical of these approaches in humanitarian contexts when we rely on remote and real-time approaches so much in our personal lives. And so that framing stuck with me throughout the week as I listened to other presentations. And she also gave some very practical examples of how WFP has mitigated these limitations in their work. So I think our investments in remote data collection methods and these other approaches will need to continue. Unfortunately, the pandemic isn't over, and there will be other public health emergencies in our areas in the future. And at the same time, our work is increasingly concentrated in areas of conflict, where we don't always have access. And this is something that's been a key point of discussion on the BHA M&E team, is that many of these adaptations we've made in the face of COVID-19 can and will be useful in these areas of conflict and protracted crises in the future. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the community continues to adapt and improve our ability to work in these contexts in the future. So thanks again for having me for this important conversation.
Yeah, that's great. You know, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the panel that I moderated where we looked at some of the aspects of digital acceleration. And I think one of the panelists said that the acceleration we've seen in the past year in the use of digital is more or equal to what has happened in the past decade. And I think whenever you have a propelling like that, you know, such a breakthrough, such a big transition, there's gonna be lots of mistakes, but there's no going back, right? I mean, we've accelerated so fast and we're exploring so many possibilities at the same time. You know, it's such a creative time for the community to figure out what works, what doesn't, that despite all the challenges and failures, quote unquote failures, that some people tried to bring up in their sessions and others said there's no failing, there's just learning. You know, the learning that's going on is so fast, so rapid. It's like the child from 0 to 3 years old. The brain is growing so fast and the networks and synapses are connecting so fast. I feel like that's what's happening in our the digital aspect of our world as food security implementers. So back to you, panel. When you saw those Mentimeter responses, any ideas jump out at you that, you know, resonated the most with you or that got you thinking that you might want to comment on?
I can jump in. I mean, I think a lot of the things that were put on there resonated with me. So it's kind of hard to pick a few. But I mean, going back to just the importance of local partners and how much this crisis has meant in terms of our opportunity to advance localization. The fact that we've been talking about localization for such a long time, but this crisis, I think, has given us kind of a fresh perspective. It's enabled us to see the capacities that local partners have. And I think it's also even in the playing ground. I think in terms of looking at the way we partner, looking at this joint decision making and joint learning is so important. So I think there's, for me, so much opportunity in the moment. It's going to be a question of how much we harness some of these lessons that are coming out of the crisis. As Adam mentioned, the crisis is not over. And as Anjay mentioned, the challenges are plenty. There's opportunities, we are making progress. But I think we have an opportunity here to pause and reflect as we go, and then see what can we take into the next crisis of a similar scale. What lessons, how can we package the lessons that are coming from the COVID-19 pandemic and all the wonderful adaptations that people are making.
I fully agree, Gitao, with that, and the idea that preparedness is taken on, I think, a larger role. So while we know that there will be more variations coming our way, Delta is on the way, obviously, and has hit some countries already quite hard. That countries that have had a little bit of a break need to invest basically in preparedness, and SPC, I think, or RCCE in that. For that matter, play a large role, I think, in preparedness and to continue the ground that we've gained, with digital, with community engagement, with working with existing community platforms, and groups that exist like community facility platforms, and committees, making sure that we're working with what exists on the ground and listen to the solutions that communities have found for themselves. I was part of a couple of fascinating sessions where, the adaptations that came out naturally that only implementers know, that people have adjusted slightly here, there, and there, including on digital and how to combine that, including, on, for example, monitoring, Viamo was used, an interactive voice response. And the first question was basically, what's your name, what's your gender, what's your sex, basically, and how old are you? And people then dropped it right then and there and didn't want to hear the information anymore, to learn basically this is your priority but not ours, thank you very much. So I think listening, continuing to listen to what's happening with our implementing colleagues on the ground and capturing that for others. We had small discussions because I think people are a little tired of digital webinars, so that we have to come up with different combinations, I think, going forward. But let's keep listening, because it was fascinating. The little adjustments that have been made are something we can all learn from, and we need to continue that over.
Yeah, one thing that caught my eye in the key takeaways from the Mentimeter results was just some comments about, simplifying the type of information and the data we collect and the indicators we're reporting on. And I think one thing that the transition to remote data collection methods has forced us to do in the COVID context is really think critically about what is the minimum information we need and what is the most critical information for informing our decisions. And, as we've adapted surveys that previously were an hour and a half long in person, you just can't keep people's attention over the phone. And so we've had to think through what is the minimum information we need, and how can we adapt our tools and make them more flexible and lean, and really focus on the information that's most critical. And so I think that's something we can take going forward too, is try to streamline some of the data collection tools we have and make them, as Antje said, more responsive to the needs of the community and their interests and their perceptions. So.
And maybe, Adam, on that same note, we have to look carefully at the indicators that donors are requiring, especially in emergency contexts, and how can we get more aligned between what our community actors, what the people on the ground are saying is feasible and what is desired at higher levels for good reason. It's just how do we align those? How do we reconcile this hunger for data at this level and the need to get stuff done at this level, or I should say this level, because we're trying to be more horizontal. So any thoughts on that from where you sit?
Absolutely. It's a conversation we have regularly. I think we're always trying to balance, the needs of all of our stakeholders, from our partners to Congress to our leadership, to make sure we have information we need to inform decisions and that we're accountable, while also minimizing any of the burden that comes with that. And so we're always trying to improve our requirements and our methods. And, we really appreciate the opportunities for engagement with the partner community that IDEAL puts together for us to be able to get some of this feedback and hear more about how we can do this better together.
No, it's great. I mean, it's a partnership, and we know that, and I think we all just keep trying to get better at this, right, as we go forward. So before we wrap up the panel, any last maybe reflections or thoughts on some of the themes this week? so many exciting ideas, really, so many things to take forward, so many lessons that people are learning fast that apply well beyond COVID. I mean, they apply to COVID now as we move from a health emergency response to now the aftermath of the food security and livelihoods impacts, and trying to do both, trying to be ambidextrous and keep both going, you know, and then this, how it really sets us up in some ways to be prepared for the next shocks. Some of the things that really resonated with me, but any last thoughts before we wrap up this part of the session?
I think for me, one of the sessions that we had looked at how we engage local governments. And I think that that's going to be critical because localization is not just about working with local civil society and community-based organizations, is that governments play an important role, especially when you're dealing with the crisis of this magnitude. And in many of the places where there's complex and protracted crisis, government has a role to play, and it's tricky for us as development actors to know how to effectively engage with government. So it was very interesting to hear how the experience from, I think it was Nawiri in Kenya, and even the experience that Titikulane has had in Malawi, how they've evolved the way they work with local government, how they've made that partnership more productive, while at the same time ensuring that they are promoting social accountability for the services that government provides. But a big part of that is looking at digitization. And you know, government has quite some long strides to make, especially at that local level, to catch up with doing development in a digital world. And I think that that's a role that we can continue to provide support in.
I think following on to Gitao, I have two sets of thoughts. I think, you know, COVID-19 has shown, I think, for beyond even food security programming, how important risk communication, community engagement, or SBC in non-emergency times is. And I wonder, given the fact that often there's only one person in the large RIFSAs doing all of this, you know, how much we're actually understaffed and how much capacity is actually needed to pull off, you know, quite complex and difficult interventions that really move people's practices along and create the trust that's needed, work with the communities. So I think that's one trail of thought, you know, going forward, how do we address that? And the second part is, you know, often there is a reaction, you know, not only from SBC, but from others to develop toolkits that we then unleash onto the field. And, you know, in times of crisis, I realize, you know, toolkits are often used by the people that develop them. And how can we, you know, really provide the hands-on practical technical assistance that sometimes is simply needed for governments, for implementers in the field, when it is needed, at the level that it's needed, and not revert to trying to develop something that one size fits all, but to be available actually for regions, for countries, with hands-on technical assistance, you know, to respond to emergencies, but also to help with preparedness now. That's a rough thought, but I hope we can refine that going forward.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm sure a lot of the adaptations we saw people doing on the ground were not because they sat and they studied a book. You know, it happened in a much more dynamic, person-to-person, focused on the essentials way, and that's something we can take away. That's something that serves us well sometimes. Not that we should ignore the complexity of things like behavior change or data needs or any of the aspects of our work, but that we have to find ways to make it more accessible, right? Adam, did you have any last reflections before we wrap up?
Yeah, you know, I think this transition to ICT-based and mobile phone-based approaches to risk communication, community engagement, to monitoring, evaluation, it's been rapid, and we've, I think, done such a great job of continuing to implement in these tough conditions. But yeah, there's so much we need to do to ensure inclusivity, and that we're not missing the most vulnerable. And so I'm personally excited to continue to see what approaches our partners take to being creative in their application of these tools and these contexts to make sure that we are reaching these most vulnerable, and to continue to hear these examples and just do better and learn from each other. So yeah, I'm just excited to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, all three of you. I know it's been a long week for all of you. You've been in many sessions, you've helped to organize many sessions, and I really appreciate your adding this layer of additional work of trying to keep some notes on some of these thoughts so that you'd be ready to come and share with us today. So I really appreciate it. I really value your insights. They're fantastic. I hope they spark some thinking among our participants, and I think it's ideal they help point us in a direction forward for some things that maybe we should be focusing on in the year ahead. So thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Maya for the next part of the session.
Great, thank you, Karen, and thank you so much, Adam, Antje, and Gitao. With that, it's time to move into some closing remarks. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Corinne Garnier, Knowledge Management and Organizational Learning Advisor on BHA's Applied Learning Team, and the Agreement Officer Representative for IDEA. So over to you, Corinne.
Thank you so much, Maya. I trust you hear me, and I'm grateful to be able to share those closing remarks. It's been an amazing week, and it's been a great pleasure to see the event unfold after several months of very hard work from the entire IDEAL team. So really congratulations to IDEAL. I will note the event is really only a visible tip of the iceberg of what this endeavor took. And a lot remain underwater and is unseen by many of us, what it takes to bring an event like this together. IDEAL has been engaging with stakeholders through consultation, responding to partners' interests, needs, carrying out proactive outreach to solicit the great content we have experienced in this week, working to develop those sessions, and successfully running the event on the time frame that is 5 a.m. to noon here in DC, to make this event truly accessible across time zones, in several languages, and in very different engaging formats: the lightning talks, the panels, the collaborative session, tea rooms, booths. This really has truly delivered a global and engaging and a partner-led learning event. This has been a full team effort. I think many of us have had the pleasure in a different session to meet and hear IDEAL staff supporting the event in many capacities, from facilitation, moderation, note-taking, technology, communication, and others. And IDEAL has done and delivered this amazing event while implementing its full activity and in many different areas. And I hope the audience has had the chance to learn more about what IDEAL is doing from the different booths, and also what the collaborating mechanism working closely with IDEAL are doing as well. So really a big round of applause to the IDEAL team for this successful, amazing, and rich event. I think in our little icon at the bottom, we can put our reaction and put an applause. If I'll model it, if you want to follow me here, is a round of applause. We would be in the room, we would all be applauding and standing up for you guys, so thank you. Just a few more reflection on my side. This year, more than a year and a half, or close to a year and a half, has been very challenging and remains challenging in so many parts of the world where the virus is still spreading, still flaring up it's exacerbating existing crises, including food insecurity. This is a global crisis which has demanded a global response and continue to do so across sectors, partners, and donors. As we heard during the opening session by our BHA leadership, the commitment and the support of USAID is unwavering, and it's even growing, along with our appreciation for all our partners' work. Through this event, it's been a golden moment to reflect on what we've learned as a community, to share our experience, to adopt and adapt successful approaches moving forward, and also to reflect on what we don't want to repeat and learn from that experience. And I heard that from the panel before, as this is really important to learn from the failures as well. What I personally heard, and is present in my mind, is, and I heard it also from the panel, empowering local actors and community members, building on and accelerating previous investment, especially on the digital technology front, the importance of existing relationship and trust building. And something that really stuck with me, and I want to explore it more, was something I heard on one of the sessions, was empathy mapping, which is really putting yourself in the community's members' shoes and try to think what they would do, what they would say, what they would think and feel in those situations. And I think that's so important to our work. With what we've learned these past few days, and as a community, we will manage this pandemic and as it continues to unfold, as well as being prepared for future shocks. What I've witnessed in the event is very inspiring. Our collective commitment is so strong. There's really true good reason to have hope in the future because there is so much good happening in the present. Thank you for all of you, participants, organizers alike, to be an embodiment of hope. And as Desmond Tutu said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. And there has been a lot of light coming through this event this past few days. So with this, we'll now turn it over to Karen Romano, the Ideal Activity Director, with great appreciation for her commitment, her leadership, and her true caring. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you for those kind words. That's very sweet of you. So I know this is about the time in an event where we start losing people because, you know, it's a lot of closing comments, but I do ask you to stay with us. We still have some good information for you and things we'd like to share with you. Before we close out, I do want to make a few comments and a few thank yous. Just give me a second. I'm having a little bit of screen trouble today. There we go. Okay. So first, I have to say thank you, Karine. It has been such a pleasure working with you and with Joan Whalen and Laura Alexander. Those are sort of our core team at BHA's technical program and quality team. And that's who we work very closely with in designing this event and designing a lot of our engagements with you. We really appreciate your collegiality, your support, your partnership. It's just been a really great working dynamic and we appreciate it so much. So thank you, Karine. So I do have a few comments to make. They'll be brief, I promise. To build on, I think, what Karine said. I love that word empathy. I think that's so important. I think we really do well to just keep remembering that, us as Ideal and all of us at every moment. The tagline for this event is navigating new possibilities in a rapidly changing world. And I keep coming back to that because I think that's what this was all about in many ways. This week, we heard so many impressive examples from implementers around the world who navigated new possibilities and adapted so quickly and so effectively when faced with the seemingly insurmountable challenges that the COVID-19 had put in their way. They collaborated with their funders, they collaborated with communities, with local partners, and with local government to adapt their work, and bravely experimented, made mistakes, learned, adapted, made mistakes, learned, did it again. I mean, we heard so many wonderful examples of that until they figured out how to get it right, how to get it working, how to keep those services moving to communities while keeping community members and staff safe. And that was pretty miraculous. And I wonder sometimes if the implementers in the room today realize just how heroic they've been and just how much they've achieved. But, you know, we see it, we hear it. And I think we all see it now as a community when we hear all these stories side by side, you know, just bubbling up from everywhere. It's truly something. I think none of us could have foreseen as well how many creative ways we would discover as a community to use digital technology, to stay connected as we navigated the pandemic together, and to stay connected with communities and continue getting those services out. We've heard a lot of challenges with digital, but we've also heard a lot of opportunities. And as I said earlier, I think there's no going back. It's more figuring out how, you know, not if. I think we all saw the opportunity that digital technology can create for greater inclusivity. Even this example this event is a great example of that. I mean, could we ever have gotten all of you in a room in Dakar or Nairobi or Dubai? I doubt it. I don't think we could have afforded it, all the per diems and the hotel and all that, and everyone being away from their duty station for so long. And, you know, and what's amazing about technology is how many more people we can reach if we figure out how to do it right. Yes, and again, and collaboration on a broader scale than maybe we ever thought possible. We couldn't really have foreseen how the pandemic movement restrictions, which felt like such a barrier at first, would also lead to some serious breakthroughs in important themes, like digital, but almost more importantly in localization. You know, Gitao brought that point up. We heard this example over and over again during the event, how local actors stepped in. Sometimes we hear, oh, the international NGOs devolve their power to the local organizations, or the international NGOs gave them this opportunity. But I loved hearing it in some of the sessions, how local actors said, no, we saw the gap and we came and we filled it. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's an energy and a momentum we have to build on as a community. The time is right. These pivots are happening. Let's see it through. Let's keep building that capacity. Let's keep getting comfortable transitioning decision-making. Let's make that transformation real, from implementers to real partners and to leaders. So some of the themes again, you know, connection, collaboration, adaptation, localization, inclusion, and I'll add the word empathy because that's just one of my favorite words. These are themes that really struck with me, and I think that struck all of us this week. How many participants from so many countries shared openly with each other at this event and just admitted mistakes they made in front of all of us, the whole community of competitors and donors. And who knew who were on these rooms sometimes, right? Sometimes we can't even see who's in the conversation, but people were so comfortable being open. And that was a really wonderful thing. It was that spirit of one dynamic food security community working together to tackle some of the world's toughest challenges. This really is the spirit that we need. This is the spirit that will enable this community to succeed in figuring out how to save lives while also continuing to strengthen resilience as we carry on responding to COVID-19. And when the next disease outbreak or other major shock comes along, because it will, and they will keep coming. So myself and the entire IDEAL team, we really look forward to continuing the conversations that we started with you this week, and to continuing to create spaces for all of us really to connect with each other, for all of you to connect with each other, and to keep learning from each other and supporting each other as one community. So now is the time in the event when we're gonna stop reflecting a bit, and we're gonna ask for your feedback because we really need it. You know, we hit you up with a lot of rapid surveys at the end of every event, and it's so important to us that you took the minute or two it took to fill those, because that helps us shape these events. So we are going to ask you to click on the link that is going to be pasted in the chat right now and stay on the call. We're not ending the session yet. We just would love you to do that while we're here together. Just take a few minutes to respond to that survey. Let me just do a little tech check here. I'm sorry, we changed up our script a little bit. Do we want to have people complete this now and put a little music on, or should we just go forward and just leave it in the link? What do you guys think? Maya?
I think we should move forward.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we should move forward and just leave it in the link, and it will only take a couple minutes to fill that out. It's really just an evaluation for this session, and then we'll follow up with a larger evaluation for the entire event. We'll come through the email. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So did we have some slides to show at this point as well? I think I'm going to talk now about ways to engage. Actually, nope, I'm going to switch to something else. I want to also point out that we are going to send you in a few hours, actually. We were going to say in a few days, but we're going to try and get it done this afternoon. We want to send you an overall event evaluation. And I know you're thinking, oh, you're evaluating us to death, but this is just so important. And the reason it's important is because you're coming off of this week. We really want to get your ideas about the overall event, how we structured it, the shape of it, how you engaged with it. Any thoughts you want to share. It's going to be simple, but we really want to hear from you. And it's kind of a great opportunity for you because IDEAL really is your mechanism in many ways. And we are about to start, we're actually in the midst of our year 4 work plan. So the feedback we get from you, if we get it soon, we really will look at it and we will use it to shape our year 4 work plan. So it's a real unique opportunity for you because of the timing to be part of planning where IDEAL goes next. So we really invite you to look for that email when it comes. It will come from FSN Network. Is that correct, Maya?
Yes, that is correct. Mm-hmm.
I may need you to stay on this unmuted because I have a few questions. Yeah, so that's my pitch on the evaluation, how important it is to us. Really would just love for you to complete that as soon as you can and get it back to us. So ways to engage. I think this is now when I cue you up for a slide, right? All right, great. Okay. All right, so ways to engage with us. Give me a second here. FSN Network is one of the most important ways you can engage with IDEAL. It's a neutral, it's not an IDEAL platform per se, but it is the main platform we use to connect with the whole community. So please, if you're not a member already, please sign up. We promise we won't bombard you with a lot of things, but what you will get is access. You'll get access anyway, even if you don't register, but tons of great material in there that we keep trying to update, keep you up to date on latest learnings and resources. You'll also have access to the FSN Network newsletter. If you subscribe to it, that helps you stay up to date on the latest food security and nutrition tools. We also have a new blog that we started up this year that you can access on FSN Network Medium account, where you can share your insights and learnings. And we totally encourage you to use that blog to get the word out. Blogs are nice and short and sweet. So I think we all really like blogging for that reason. Many of the recordings on the event sessions that you participated in are already available on the FSN Network YouTube channel. And right now we're pasting the link, I believe, for that YouTube channel into the chat box. So you'll be able to access many of those right now. But within 2 weeks, we'll have uploaded all the session recordings and materials onto the FSN Network. And we'll let you know when we've done that through an announcement on the FSN Network newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, this would be a really good reason to subscribe. And again, you've got the link in the chat box. So we are very close to closing. Before I close, I do want to say a few more thank yous. First, special thank you to BHA, Brian Bacon, and Sarah Charles for the welcoming keynote. I think it meant a lot to all of us to hear their words of appreciation and encouragement. A really big thank you to all the session presenters and facilitators who are from so many different countries, so many different organizations. And we know you all work so hard to prepare those event sessions. And an amazing thank you to the IDEAL team. Everybody was involved in producing this event. I am so proud of this team. And I need to make a special shout out here to the IDEAL KM and communications team who led the design and technology orchestration of this event and made it happen. They've been behind the scenes. You've been seeing their names. They're off screen, they're on screen. They're spread out all over this office in different rooms. I want to invite the team just to turn on their camera because right now they're all in one room in front of the screen. So you guys want to take a virtual bow? Our production leads, our production folks, where are you guys? Is it going to happen? Whose screen are you on? There we go. Woohoo! With their masks. Thank you so much, guys. Fabulous job. Fabulous job. And lastly, I really want to thank all of you, our participants. for joining us these past few days, for making this event such an incredible success through your participation. You are all amazing, and speaking on behalf of IDEAL, it is an honor and it is a privilege to serve you. So with those last words, I want to just invite you to use that link in the chat box, share your feedback. And we have a tradition at IDEAL now that we're virtual. If you can turn on your camera, we'd love to take a group photo. So if you can turn on your camera and give us a nice big smile and a wave, we'll take a group photo and we'll be sharing that back. I love, we're getting nice waves there, full body waves. So thank you so much. And have we got the photo? Is the photo there?
I still see people turning on their videos, so please keep turning on your videos just for a little bit more, so we can make sure to catch as many beautiful faces as possible.
Yay, Gatal's got his thumbs up. Charles is dancing. I don't know who our dance king was during the Ready for a group photo? We are at time and I want to keep the time, so. Got our photo? It's wave and smile, everybody. Say bye. We're going to keep this line open for a bit so you can fill out the evaluation. We're going to show that beautiful slideshow where we had images from all our sessions, and we'll play some music. And when you're done, you can leave the session. Thank you again. You're wonderful, and have a great rest of your day or evening.
درشانت لنا غوري يا ماني غوري درشانت لنا غوري يا ماني داش المدانة فواهر نقلا هض داش المدانة فواهر نقلا فوق تكلادي شيودوا كنت انت فوق تكلادي شيودوا درشاني دلنا غوري يا ما شاني تلانا غوري يا ماني
I think that we have been able to see the full slideshow, and that was so amazing to see all those memories from this week. I don't know if the interpreters are still here, but I would like to do a shout out to them. They have been with us the entire event, so thank you so much for fantastic work from early morning in all these sessions. And I think with that, we're closing out. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get some rest.
You